Hello and welcome to a demo of WIP Synth. I'm not going to waste time giving background info. There's lots of info on the GitHub README, all the source codes there as well. So if you're interested in details, check that out. I'll have a link in the description. I'll jump right in. So basically, WIP Synth's a collection of modules. They all link together, as you can see, into a graph for audio processing. It's good for audio experimentation, building synthesizers, building effects, testing things out. Has support for different audio programming languages, including Faust and Soul. But yeah, what I built here is a basic sort of acid techno bass patch. If you click the play button, you'll hear what it sounds like. And there's different controls for it as well here. I have a physical MIDI device that's interfacing with it via WEB MIDI, so I can actually push the dials and the knobs on my physical controller to change the properties of this patch. Alright, so I'll give you a rundown of what the different pieces are here and how they fit together. Start off with, we have this MIDI keyboard input. Right now this is hooked up to my computer's keyboard. You can actually hook it up to MIDI keyboards as well via WEB MIDI. If you toggle here, you can select, I only have the MIDI mix installed, but if you plug a different one in, you can use that as your input, but right now it's mapping from my keyboard or mouse into MIDI events, and those MIDI events get routed into this MIDI editor. Right now this is just a pass-through. This is a full-fledged MIDI editor. You can draw in notes. Right now I just have this this bassline programmed in here, and that routes into the MIDI input for the synth designer. So this is the main noise producer for this patch. The synthesizers. So you can see here, it's a lot going on here, but overall there's two different synth voices here. This one isn't actually making any noise at all. But if we turn the volume up, I was playing around with something here. But yeah, each of these is a different synthesizer basically, and they all output together. There's a bunch of different options here. You have the traditional basic waveforms as well as a wavetable synthesizer and an FM synthesizer, which is what we're using here. So this is the modulation matrix for that. Right now it's basically just outputting a sawtooth wave. But there's a couple different voices, and you get all the basic synthesizer stuff you'd expect. You have a volume envelope. You have a filter that's disabled. We're using a different filter. A bunch of different effects to choose from. You have effects per each of the different operators here. A lot of stuff you can do with this, but right now it's just pretty simple. But yeah, what we really have is this envelope generator built in, which is modulating the filter cutoff on this Moog, this software version of a traditional hardware Moog filter. And what we're doing here is we have the filter cutoff being modulated with this envelope here, which gets triggered every time a note plays, and this envelope is per voice as well. So we also have the length of the envelope. Where is it? The envelope length is getting modulated via param buffer 0. So param buffer 0 is actually exposed here. So FF synth input 0 is mapped to this output of this other MIDI controller I have. So all the different knobs are assigned a different MIDI value, and the MIDI value gets mapped to the LFL length samples output here. And depending on the value of the slider, we take the output of the MIDI controller, scale and shift it up into this range, map it into this input here, this param buffer. It's the 0, the voice 0, FM input 0, and that gets used to modulate the length of the envelope here. So you can see that in action. If I bring this knob up, you'll see that the envelope gets longer, and we don't get quite as far into it with this yellow indicator here. I'm also modulating the filter's resonance with another knob. So yeah, everything's very modulatable. I have another soft flipper here, just giving it a little bit more volume and adding a bit of distortion. But yeah, other than that, that's pretty much the gist of what's going on in this patch. We also have a sequencer here, which if you want to hear it on its own, just playing a pretty basic drum pattern. And we can program something else in here if we want. There you go. This mixer mixes the sound together. At the end here, we have this simple biquad filter built into Web Audio. Whoops. But I also have the controls to this mapped to outputs on my MIDI controller, so I can slide a knob, change the filter cutoff and the resonance. And it all feeds into the destination. So yeah. There's a couple other modules that aren't in use here for things like granular synthesis. I have a filter designer to build complicated filters, sort of like an equalizer, by compositing a bunch of different simple filters together. But yeah, basically, WIP Synth is just a collection of these different modules, and they allow you to process audio. Oh, I'll show you. Like, you can also use the arbitrary code in Faust or Soul, both of which are digital signal processing languages. So you can see we can load in a we'll load in a comb filter preset I copied from somewhere here, and we'll patch it into our audio graph here right at the end. And you can see once we go over here and we compile this code, it'll generate us a UI based off the code right here. So it'll automatically create a UI with these sliders and whatnot. We can change the parameters of this Faust code dynamically. Well, there you go. All kinds of fun stuff you can do. There's tons of code. Pretty much any Faust or Soul code. I'll show you Soul also works. I have a Soul preset in here somewhere. There's one. You can just give ourselves a reverb. This was one of the examples on the Soul website, soul.dev. So if we compile this, here we have some reverb. So yeah, we get a lot of power by using these different programming language plugins. You can basically create your own effects. There's also a bunch of effects I've built in to the FM synth. And then there's a bunch of other utility modules out there, like you can create a low frequency oscillator. So, whoops. We have this LFO, and we can scale to shift the output from -1 to 1 into whatever range we want. So we'll go from 0 to 10. Let's modulate some other param on our FM synth here. So synth 0, FM input 2, and then we'll find something in here to modulate. So you can see it being modulated by this LFO here. So yeah, at the end of the day, everything is very highly modulatable. Everything connects to everything else. Everything runs on web audio. Everything's dynamic and interactive and suitable for exploration. It's a lot of rough edges. I don't really focus on usability for a lot of different things. The UI is, as you can see, pretty primitive. I use a lot of this UI library that I forked for auto-generating UIs and stuff like that, just to make development simpler and easier. But yeah, basically, that is what's going on here. There's a lot more I haven't shown. I've been working on this for an embarrassing amount of time, honestly, on and off. It's kind of been my forever project. Yeah, hope you enjoyed this. I'll be releasing more videos soon. I'm going to try to make some... It's to the point where you can actually make decent music, right? loops and similar patches. Like it's sort of not FM, modular synth-esque in its capabilities, but there's a lot of features for more, realistic DAWs, like this full-fledged MIDI editor. It's got a lot of power for this kind of thing. So eventually I want to make, real tracks with it. I would love to move into making actual, music with it. And that is the long-term goal with the project. Anyway, I'm rambling. Hope you enjoyed the video, and stay tuned for more.